Hi, I'm Matt Bell. I'm the author of the new novel Appleseed. I'm here at Changing Hands today to talk about some of the influences and inspirations behind the novel, as well as my writing practice. Let's get started. So the first book I want to talk about is Parable of the Sower by Octavia E. Butler, a book I really love that I've taught in classes on world building, science fiction. And one of the things I love about it is just like how close it is to our present. I think the future in Parable of the Sower feels really urgent and near, and I think it's sort of the way it's interacting between the climate future in the book, the way it's interacting with corporations and indentured servitude and sort of these futures of work, and also the way people are looking for hope in the book, the sort of invention of Earthseed and this idea of like what might come after climate and political apocalypse in this book feels really important and pressing to me. One of the other books that influenced Appleseed and my writing in general is Ursula K. Le Guin's The Word for World is Forest. Le Guin's writing in general was a big influence on Appleseed. I read maybe about halfway through the writing process in 2018. I sometimes do this project where I try to read as many books as I can by a certain author. And so in 2018 I read 26 of Le Guin's books during the course of the year. And then The Word for World is Forest is one of my favorites and sort of thematically in line with some of the work in Appleseed. Sort of a post-colonial space story, set on another planet where people have come in to take natural resources and to enslave the local population because they're out of resources on Earth. And so some of the thematics that I think are in Appleseed, talking about extractive capitalism, talking about the colonization of the Midwest and of the future, really. I think one of the things Le Guin did for me that was really important was show how you could progress plot through ideas and through sort of inquiry into what is right or what is best, as opposed to purely like sort of action or conflict. I think that's really important. This book is full of sort of action in the same way that Appleseed is, but I don't think like that's the reason for the book to exist. Like the reason in some ways is to try to think about the futures we're making and the ways we're interacting with other people and with the natural world. Another book that's been a big influence on my thinking about climate change and thinking about how we depict the natural world is Jeff VanderMeer's Annihilation and the other books in his Southern Reach trilogy. One of the things I think Annihilation is really great at is getting at the uncanniness of nature sometimes, the way we sort of encounter it in the world and feel either a sense of rejection or a sense of maybe acceptance or belonging, or even just feeling like small in the face of the natural world, which is something that I think some of us go to the wilderness to feel. One of the things that's most interesting to me about VanderMeer's novel is that I think it's about a nature that no longer like needs or wants humans. And I think sort of that post-human ecology is really part of what grabs so many people about it and is both like entrancing and terrifying about it. And I think trying to think about post-human futures in Appleseed was a big part of the far future part of my novel. And I know Annihilation is one of the books that showed me one of the ways that can be done. The fourth book I wanted to talk about is Paolo Bacigalupi's The Water Knife. I really like this book partly because of its thinking about the near future. I think writing about the far future in some ways is easier than writing about the near future. The part in Appleseed that's 50 years in the future was the hardest to figure out because the cause and effect between now and then has to be sort of more believable. And I think Paolo's book does a really great job of thinking about Phoenix specifically and the way Phoenix will be in the future. It's set almost entirely here and also in Las Vegas. But I think thinking about how water and the loss of water in the West will impact the future life here is really entrancing in this book and terrifying in this book, and showing how to do that in a way that incorporates the real history of the West and the political realities of the West in designing a future to set a story in was really inspiring. And I think another example of like how to think using sort of like imagined futures. I think this is really one of the best novels I've seen about water in the West, while also being like a fun spy thriller. And I think that combination is really winning, is another reason that book has done so well and been so popular. The fifth book I want to talk about today is The Fifth Season by N.K. Jemisin, really one of my favorite fantasy novels from the last few years. I really love the way this book combines sort of a interdisciplinary world building, like a novel that's both about an invented climate crisis, a series of climate crises on a secondary world, also about racism and class and systems of oppression, and the way that that's all folded into the world building. I mean, this book is really intriguing. It's also a novel with three storylines, as Appleseed is, and another example of how to weave and thread three stories together in a way that is both like surprising and inevitable, so you kind of hit that ending and you feel like oh, this is the only way it could be and I didn't see it coming. And I think that that's sort of the ideal when you're working with multiple stories. And I think Jemisin's book is a great example of how well that can be done. Thanks so much to Changing Hands for having me today to talk about 5 books that influenced and inspired my novel APPLESEED. And thanks to all of you for watching and for buying your books local.